Hi, everyone. My name's Anish. I'm the co-founder and CEO of PlayVision, where we use AI to create custom LLMs for sports teams and fans. Growing up, I was a huge sports fan. After a couple eye surgeries cut my playing career short, I wanted to stay connected to the game. As a young founder in sports, I wanted to create this podcast as a platform to have athletes, founders, and other creators come on and share their story as a way to bridge the gap between sports and technology. So, without further ado, roll the intro. Hey everyone, my name's Anish. Welcome back to the PlayVision Podcast, and I got a really special guest for you guys today. One of our good friends, we've known him now for a few months, and it's NBA legend CJ Watson. Obviously, he's got 10 years in the space. A little bit of backstory. I did some research on you, but I know we've obviously connected. Two-time state champion, four-year vet at Tennessee, and then obviously, 10 years in the NBA. So thanks for obviously hopping on, brother.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I think, I wanted to kind of just start, really take it back to high school. Obviously, like I said, two-time state champion back at Bishop Gorman. I had known it for being a football school in my time at Cal football. So, obviously curious to hear a little bit about the basketball side. And
Yeah.
just kind of walk me through it. I mean, at least from, that athlete perspective, doing it, obviously 4 years. Just kind of give me the rundown on it.
Yeah, it was cool here growing up in Vegas. Sports was always a big thing. Like you said, the most popular sport is probably, football maybe, but I think basketball started to take a kind of precedent as I was growing up, going to high school. Gorman was definitely a football school, but I guess we turned it into a basketball school with all the state championships now. And then also my coach is still there. He's like I call him the Phil Jackson of Gorman basketball. I think he's won like 15 out of 20 state championships. He's produced,
Wow.
several NBA players, McDonald's All-Americans and stuff like that. So he's doing a good job there. But I think for me, it was all about my parents wanting me to go to a good school academically first, and athletics was always second. So I think that's kind of where my kind of forefront to going to Gorman started. So my parents always knew I was going to go there, but I didn't know anything I was going to go. So I just listened to my parents and did whatever they told me to do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously can relate a little bit on that. Like parents obviously wanted me to go to a private school actually throughout. It was something that was a big part of my family. So kind of, did that and you obviously kind of see like the differences in the two. But I think for me in the Bay Area, it was just something like, okay, you're told to go to this private school. It was all Catholic schools in my area, but I know for, Bishop Gorman, like, is it the only Catholic school in the area or were there a bunch
No,
around?
there's a couple Catholic schools. I'm not Catholic, but it was good
Yeah.
just to get that religion and stuff like that. But I think there's another one, Faith Lutheran. There's several here in the city.
Got it. I see. And then, I mean, kind of just walk me through like some of those like, state championship games. Like what was kind of the process preparing back in the day? I mean, was it, just a lot of manual work? Was it something that, it was just like, hey, coach tells you to do this and you guys do it? What was
Yeah.
kind of that process like, preparing for those games?
So for at Gorman, we were fortunate enough. My first year, I didn't play. I played like 3 or 4 games. I had a bad hamstring injury, so that kind of propelled me to sit out the first year. But my sophomore year, I came back. I had a lot of motivation to come back and be healthy because there's a lot of hype around me just going to high school and and making an impact. But I didn't do that my first year. So my sophomore year, I came off the bench. We won state championship. So I think one of our old coaches who played at Gorman, he played overseas and had a stint in the NBA. Jojo Garcia, he gave us all his workouts and stuff like that, and even came back to Gorman to work out with us. So I think that's what helped us get mentally focused and physically ready to go through the grind of a state championship. So him being there kind of helped get us over that hump, and we beat our rival Durango here in Vegas.
No, I love to see it. I mean, is it something that like, you know, was that kind of the thing that really wanted you to say, okay, I could play basketball for like a really long time? Or was it always something that you were just like, hey, it's an activity that I love to do, but was that kind of the turning point? What would you say was like the switch?
Basketball for me was always just a family game that we always played and also in the neighborhood, but also just to stay out of trouble.
Mhm.
I think my parents put us in sports, me and my brother in sports, just to keep us active and keep us out of trouble. But overall, now that I'm a parent, I think sports teach us so many valuable lessons, and I definitely think being playing basketball, it was never for me. My goal was never to get to the NBA. My goal was to help my parents financially to pay for college, and I know how to do that through either academics or sports. So if I can do both, keep my grades straight, and actually be pretty decent at basketball, I can help that, and also be one of the first in my family to get to college.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective to have. Like, especially kind of doing it familial obligations. I think people of different cultures have it in a different way. And I think if
Yeah,
sports can be one of those avenues to do it, I think that's just so amazing.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, maybe we could transition to life at Tennessee. I know, it was kind of early 2000s when you were there. You did all 4 years, right? It's not as
Yep.
common now for people to
Yeah.
go to the NBA like that. So, for me, I growing up, it was always kind of that whole one and done
Mhm.
was that big, kind of norm. So, I mean, yeah, I'm curious to hear like what was it like doing all 4 years as an athlete, right?
Yeah.
Being prevalent and actually like having NBA aspirations. Yeah,
It
please
was,
walk.
it was cool, man. Tennessee was well, it was my number one choice, but my number one choice was to go to UCLA because I'm from the
Okay.
West Coast.
Yeah.
I'm from Vegas, and I'm a city kid, and LA is a city, and they got beaches and good weather. So, the coach at UCLA, he got fired, so I opened back my recruiting, and Tennessee was the first to call. My family is from Nashville, which is a 2.5 hour drive from Knoxville, and actually Tennessee is a football school. So it was definitely weird to really go to a football school where you see hundreds of thousands of fans, and the school being known for football and women's basketball. So men's basketball wasn't super prevalent. I think they made it a couple times to the tournament, but we had to work our way back into recognition. But I definitely think it was cool going there. I think a lot of people don't know this. Also, I was going to leave my junior year to put my name into the draft.
Oh
I didn't do
wow.
that
Okay.
because my coach got fired, Buzz Peterson. So I thought, it's time for me to put my name into the draft. I did what I did at Tennessee, but the new coach, Bruce Pearl, came in and kind of convinced me of his new style, which I was very keen on, up and down, run and gun, that's the kind of style I grew up playing, watching Jerry Tarkanian and the Running Rebels, and also just playing that throughout my life. But yeah, he convinced me to stay, and it was one of the best decisions probably because I got better. Probably had one of the best years I had at Tennessee. Then also we had the number two ranking in the tournament. So we just got upset, in the second round. But it was pretty big to get that, to get the goal always the go to the NIT the first 3 years before, but now have a number two seed in the tournament was pretty big.
Yeah, absolutely. Then you were all SEC that year, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a
So
great year, man. Fun year.
absolutely. So I think then, maybe we can transition into NBA life. Or before that, actually, we could maybe talk about NIL now. I mean, obviously 4 years, it's now just becoming, I guess, less common for obviously like the one and dones are still going to be prevalent, but like the
Mhm.
concept of staying at the same school for, more than 2 years, not just in football now, but you're seeing it in basketball. Like, I think, what are your thoughts on kind of, have you talked to any players specifically about going through that route? Like, what is, I guess, again, a lot can happen in about 20 years. So what do you think has
Yeah.
been the biggest change with obviously the money, but like maybe just the player's perspective of like taking these offers and kind of going to these different schools?
Yeah, I think players, I think number one, I think it's always fun for always great to see the players get paid. I think they should have been getting paid even before my era. So I definitely think that's a plus. I don't even think they're getting the just due of what they should be getting. But I definitely think, NIL has changed the landscape of the game and the integrity of the game, good and bad. But I definitely think the biggest thing is like loyalty, and sticking things out. So I think now just it's crazy to see kids jump from one school to the next every year if they don't like a situation or the situation is not working out for them. So, and my daughter is in it also now, so she's one of the top volleyball players in her class. So
Right.
it's cool to see, but also I always tell her, you got to stick things through. Everything's not going to be, how you like it all the time. So just because don't just go to places for the name or the money or whatever they're trying to give you, go to somewhere where you can continue to grow and develop and also continue to get better and also get your degree. That's the main goal of college, to learn as much as you can and have those great experiences.
Absolutely. I think, actually I've talked about this more from like a technical perspective on like what the next steps for college look like. I think, with just how people can kind of build things, I think you're going to see more and more people not actually stay the 4 years, either get the degree quicker or even
Yeah.
just drop in general. And it's like it's very interesting to see in sports. It's already kind of been like that, right? Like I think athletes try and just forego the degree in order to, like take advantage of as many young years as they can, right?
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
mean, you got NBA players coming in at like 18 or 19, like flag
Yeah.
reclass, right? Like I mean, it's really astonishing to see what they can do even at that age. I think that is just, goes to the advances in like sports performance and all that. But I think you do make a good point of like sticking through with and developing because I mean, I've seen it like from a football lens, like people who stay 2 to 3 years end up,
Hmm.
really knowing and understanding like the team culture, the atmosphere, what they run.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where like it can really help you. And obviously now you're seeing like the flip side of it. Like some people transfer and immediately do well, right? And
Right.
like can really change themselves from maybe like a borderline starter at, one conference to just an absolute stud in another. So I
Yeah.
think it goes both ways, but it's like really curious to see now that you can get both sides of the coin. Whereas
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
during your time, it was just like, hey, you got to kind of ride it out at the school you chose, and
Yeah.
just like, hey, take advantage of any opportunity that you can, and really stick and make the most of it. So I guess yeah, now it's like maybe just a little bit more of what you can do, but
Yeah.
um, so hopefully, yeah, I mean, hopefully you agree with that. I think that's like something that I know some athletes have talked about, just being able
Yeah.
to like have that ability to choose.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the athletes have the power, but you also didn't know with the power it comes with a lot of responsibility. So you got to make the right choices. But I think for me, like I said, it's just all about development and getting better over time. Because like I said, things are going to happen. You're not going to like the coach, or the coach might not like you. So you just got to figure things out. But definitely, there's always that option to transfer and go somewhere else where you can have a better situation. So I think that's also good too.
Absolutely. I guess, yeah, then we could kind of jump into the NBA life. I know you went undrafted, and then I think it was about, what, half a year before you went from the D League to the call up to the Warriors, right?
Yeah, I
Maybe.
went overseas my first year
Okay.
in Italy. Then my last for the first 6 months, and then my last month and a half, I played in Greece for PAOK. Then came back to America, and then played in the D League for a month and got a call up. And
Got it.
I think I was actually the 100th call up
Oh,
in,
wow.
in D League history. So it was pretty cool.
That is very sick. Wow. I guess then maybe, I know people obviously love to talk about the NBA life, but I actually want to kind of know about that perspective, like
Yeah.
playing overseas for a year and then kind of transitioning back. Like, I mean, especially at your age, like I'm around that right now. Like I'm 22, and it's
Mhm.
like it's really probably an interesting time to go from just a totally different country and culture to then come back and then get called up
Yeah.
in a month. So what was that like process like, especially at that age?
It was crazy, man. I was in college one day, playing in SEC or whatever. Then next thing you know, I didn't get drafted, which I was super, pissed about. And actually, the Detroit Pistons called me and told my agent they would select me with the last pick, 60th pick of the draft. And the pick came, I didn't get called, so I was very pissed about that. But so we just talked to go overseas because I didn't have any money, so I need to go make some money. And I think that was the best. That was probably one of the best decisions. But also throughout the time, like I said, there's always these ups and downs you have in life, and how you deal with adversity. Every month while I was overseas in Italy, my coach got fired. So
Wow.
every month I had to readjust to a new system, a new coach. Teammates say the same for the most part, but the coach, I think that's a big thing to try to adjust to, especially for me as a point guard, trying to be an extension of the coach on the court. So that was probably the most difficult thing I had to deal with overseas. I think the language barrier was there too, but for the
Yeah.
most part, most of the people in Italy spoke English and in Greece, so it was pretty cool. Like I wouldn't beat the food in Italy was great. The pasta, the pizza, the
I
family
bet, man.
culture, like all that kind of stuff I loved. I just didn't like being away from my family. So I'm a big family guy in my family. We always had family dinners and cookouts and stuff like that. So that was the biggest thing. I think my first phone bill when I was overseas was $2,000 my first month
Damn.
because I called home so much and I was just
Yeah.
super homesick. But then my dad came over probably like midway. He stayed with me for like a month in each spot in Italy and Greece, and so it was pretty cool for him to be able to do that too.
Absolutely. No, actually, my dad kind of had a similar story when growing up, like my dad's parents actually had to move to Belgium for a client, and
Yeah,
they had to move at 13 to Holland, him and his brother at like 13 and 14. So like, yeah, like super homesick. So he would literally like try and take a train to go from Netherlands to like Belgium every 2 weeks, and then his parents would do the same. And so it
yeah,
just makes a ton of sense. Like I'm glad that like, the familial kind of connections always kind of power through even in
yeah,
those
yeah,
situations.
for
But
sure.
I mean, based on like, what you mentioned with the coach kind of like just high turnover, was that something really common in international basketball? Was that something that like, or was it just specific to your team?
I think it was just specific to our team. And that's the first time I ever heard about it. At least I,
Yeah.
mean, I had 5, 6 coaches in like literally a span of 5 or 6 months. So I never heard of that. I've always seen it in that now that I'm done playing or when I was playing, and still I never seen coaches get fired that much and
Yeah.
hired. So maybe one or two, but for the most part, overseas is just a different beast when it comes to professionalism, the business of basketball, stuff like that. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not talked about a lot here. I know obviously international players are now making their headlines,
mhm,
especially over the last like I want to say like 5 to 10 years.
yeah.
But I mean, the probably the experience and just how the games are being played, how they're orchestrated, how like I'm sure walkthroughs are even done. Like I'm sure
Yeah.
everything is just very different. So I guess maybe when we can maybe jump to the NBA level, but like was it when you kind of got to the league, was it like just super different from like overseas and super different from college?
Oh
Like
yeah.
what would you say is like the biggest like maybe two or three like points where it was just like, whoa, okay, like
I
this is
would
taking over.
say, yeah, I would say like the way you travel in the NBA is just unlike no other. Compared to overseas where you're taking bus trips everywhere, which sucks.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and then I would say just the business of basketball in the NBA is different. And then also just the players. They're so much more athletic than college,
Mhm.
bigger, stronger, faster. If you think you have an open layup to the lane, it can close in a split second because guys are just that athletic and that fast. So I think that was the biggest adjustment for me. Just was especially at my size, at 6'2", I was trying to always score over bigger guys. And guys are quicker and faster than me, so I had to kind of figure out the ways I can score and be effective in the NBA game.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say like, you had 5 seasons above 39% from three, right? So I
Yeah,
wanted to kind of dive a little bit into that, and it was like across different teams and like even like what you were able to do as a shooter. What was kind of the prep process like going again, yeah, like from college to the NBA? Was it super analytically driven, or was it really just eye test and being asked to say, hey, get to your spot, make sure you can kind of hit this at a certain clip? Was it literally just
yeah.
rep after rep? Was it anything that, people were like, hey, if you could do this particular movement, like you could get way more effective that way? What was that prep process like back in that
It
day?
was it was more of an eye test. I think analytics didn't really start to come into play maybe to like maybe I don't know like 2010 maybe.
Hmm.
People really started diving into analytics, but for me, I know Coach Nelson when I was with the Warriors, Coach Nelson always wanted me to finish at a higher percentage at the rim, which like with like floaters, taking contacts, but also being a dynamic 3-point shooter because people were leaving me open or going under my screens at first until I started to prove that I could hit the three. So I think, and then also the mid range was super big back then. I mean, I feel like I say back then like it's like 40 years ago, but back then the mid range was super, effective. And I think that's kind of where my game kind of stood out because I could score to all three levels, 3-point, mid range, and then also, at the rim here and there. But I think over time, as I got older and I just started to shoot the three more because I didn't want to go inside with anybody
Yeah.
and bang. And that's how I could extend my career as a guard. Like if you keep going there all the time, you're going to eventually get hurt.
Right.
The guys are bigger, faster, and that ground does not give because when you hit that
Yep.
ground, you're going to feel it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess like the thing, for me, like when I play like pickup, obviously it's nowhere near any type of speed that you probably played, even in high school, college, or the pros, but it's like the paint's always kind of that just scary area, right?
Yeah,
Like it's like
yeah,
one of those things where one wrong move and it can cost you like a few months. So I guess like
yeah.
was there anything in particular that you looked for when you were kind of going to take a shot in that area? Was it something like, hey, I'm looking at how maybe like the bigs feet are planted or where they're kind of
Yeah.
like position to where you can maybe go up and under or maybe from the side, like anything specific that way?
Yeah, for me, it was all about outlets. When I drive to the basket, I want to know where I have an outlet in case I think I have a shot, but then maybe I don't at the last second. I can get it to my wing or my big. He can flash back to the middle, or I can have that hammer to the baseline or whatever. So I think I was really big on outlets because when you get in there, you don't want to jump in the air and turn it over or come down with the ball or whatever. So that looks bad on you. So you always want to make sure you have your outlets, and
Yep.
then also just when you get to that free throw line just decide what you're going to do. You're going to shoot it or pass it. That's what Coach Nelson was really big on. So I always had that mentality, just go into a score. And if I if I didn't score, then oh well, at least he couldn't take me out for scoring because that's what Coach Nelson would take you out if you weren't aggressive. He'd
I
never
see.
take you out for not shooting. He wouldn't take you out for shooting unless they were just bad shots, but he would take you out for not shooting the ball. So he
Interesting.
always wanted all five of his guys to be aggressive and be a threat out there.
I see. Yeah, I think another thing too, like, obviously, I've kind of looked at things from a very analytical perspective, but the biggest thing I know after kind of working in like a sports team room, it's like coaches do think differently. Like
Yeah,
inherently, it is, it's just how the brain works, right? Some
yeah,
people are going to look at a particular play this way and some are going to look at that way. So I guess, since you like were very accustomed to a lot of coaches turnover, I'm sure even at the NBA level, there were a lot of coaches that you played for. Was there anything in particular that like really stood out to how maybe a coach approached like game planning as well as like even executing during the game itself?
yeah. Tibbs is like number one for me on that book. Like I said, I didn't know anything about Tibbs before I got to the Bulls. We were coming in. with him as a new coach. We had D Rose as a
Yep.
budding superstar. We had Joakim Noah. We had all the pieces, but we were ranked like I think maybe 11th or 12th in the Eastern Conference rankings that year, and we ended up first.
Yep.
So just it comes from Tibbs' preparation. He had us prepared. Literally, practices were harder than the games. Like literally after games, we would be like, "Oh, this is cool," but damn, we got to go to practice tomorrow. Because we know Tibbs is going to, no matter if we won or lost, Tibbs is going to be hard on us and make sure we're prepared for the next person. So he had us prepared even in the playoffs. We knew everybody's plays. We knew the strengths and weaknesses of the players coming off the bench. I had to know the player that I was going to guarding, what they wanted to do, what they like to do, if I wanted to pick on full court, ways that I can harass the point guard. So he had us, prepared fully. And I think all that preparation comes from him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, obviously, two sides of the prep, right? It's the coach's side and then it's the player side. So obviously
Yeah.
coaches are watching film, they're tagging things. I know some coaches literally do for 5 games like over 500 offensive and defensive clips. Like
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
lot. And then
Yeah.
you've got the player side where they're given a scouting report, but it's also on you to make sure you know tendencies of the player. So,
Yeah.
I'm really curious from the player's perspective, like how much of it was watching your specific guy's film, how much of it was just like I said, like tracking the movements or even like, maybe just taking down notes. Like what was I would say maybe like your specific nugget or something that you thought was like really keen on how you were able to prepare for a guy?
Yeah, I would always watch film on the guy I was guarding and maybe the other maybe shooting guard too, just in case I get switched off on them because
Yep.
now the NBA is big on switching. Back when I played, I always stayed on the point guard or the shooting guard, so wasn't no one really switched.
Yeah.
But I definitely watch a lot of film on those positions. I would maybe count the guy's dribbles of what he likes to do. Maybe if he likes to drive going left, or maybe every time he goes right, he goes all the way to the basket, so I can know where to maybe get a charge or something like that. So just to get those little possessions. It could be the
Mhm.
meaning of the game, win or loss, but definitely in the playoff series.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because across so many different sports, so many times it comes down to one specific play, no
Yep.
matter what. Like basketball can have literally like 60 or 70 possessions between each team. And like
Yep.
it's just literally could come down to a single thing where it's like out of bounds or a single charge drawn. So it's really cool to
Yeah.
see like how both the players and the coaches think about it. And I mean, yeah, as you mentioned switching, because like nowadays you could be on someone like a Joakim Noah, like down in the paint or like
Yeah.
the worst area to be in against the worst,
Right.
particular matchup for you. And it's really crazy and cool to see now how people like can draw up stuff schematically. And it just goes to show this is kind of a broader thing actually that I've kind of talked about more from like again a tech perspective, but we actually like are claimed to be in like the second half, quote unquote, of the chessboard, meaning like
Mhm.
advances are now like exponentially kind of going up to the point
Yeah.
where, just like it's going from like 2 to the power of 32 to 2 to the power of 33. And like we're in
Right.
that time frame. And you're seeing it in everything, right? Like
Yeah.
biotech, right? Like even like, just hard tech, basketball, football. Like it's really cool to see every industry be impacted by, advances in our generation. And I think, you having that perspective of what it was like before and even seeing it now is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I think to take it, this is maybe more of a fun question than I had. I'm sure people are curious about, but one, kind of what do you miss most about playing? And then two, favorite like NBA city. What was like the best kind of part about that?
The thing I miss most is maybe like traveling and just hanging out with the teammates, just being in the locker room setting, just talking trash, talking about, just life and,
Yep.
maybe, kids, stuff like that. The best city, NBA city, to travel to or just to play in or like the arena.
Both, both.
I mean, I'm a West Coast kid, so I love LA.
Mhm.
Then the best arena to play in, I would say like Madison Square Garden, just
Okay.
because of the
Yep.
New York and all the feel, and you go to New York and it's a different
Yeah.
vibe.
I bet it's a lot different than like something like Memphis. No shade,
Oh
but
yeah, for sure. Yeah, you said that, not me.
yeah, now all the Grizzlies fans are probably not gonna watch any of our content, but it is what it is. I did want to say, now kind of we can transition out of the NBA life because I'm, obviously this is kind of the part where even I've met you is like life after it, right? Obviously raising a family. I know your oldest daughter is going to Pitt for volleyball. Obviously,
Yeah,
well, congratulations, and it's really cool to see. Actually, she's the same age as my younger brother, which is, really crazy to think
yeah,
about.
yeah,
And biggest thing maybe as kind of a parent now of the athlete, right? It's kind of like the other side. In the tech world, like founder wise, it's like founders and like investors. The investors is like the dark side, so to speak. Like,
yeah.
what's it kind of like being, yeah, like you said, like raising a kid and seeing her go through the kind of similar processes that you are going or you were going through.
It's good. It's cool, man. I always tell her she has a cheat code because I have been through it. I've done it,
Yeah.
good and bad. So I can tell her what to do, what not to do. But she can just kind of take all that wisdom and knowledge and apply it to her life in the way and the views that she wants to. So it's always cool. I never thought, or wanted my kid to play sports just because I played it. So
Mhm.
I definitely think it's cool to see her growth over time. And like I said, the development. That's been the biggest thing for me. If you're
Yeah.
gonna play the game, here's what you need to do. You gotta ice, you gotta recover, you gotta put in extra time, extra work. So she's been doing that since day one, and she's always been hungry. And I never had to push her to do anything. She's wanted it on her own. And I think that's the biggest thing for me that brings me joy, that she's so successful, but also that she wants it more than anything, more than I want it for her, or her mom wants it for her, but she wants it on her own to be and can create her own path.
I think you said it best. Like, I think especially being like, the younger generation, like having someone do it already and like having the obligation. I'm sure she probably thinks it like, hey, my dad did this. I want to also kind of prove to myself that I can,
Yeah, yeah.
be really good in my own right. And I'm sure that's really cool and brought you guys close together, right? And I'm sure she's kind of come up with some ideas on how she can get better and she probably runs it by you, right? And it's just really like a good situation to be in because nothing is better than like I think upbringing. Like I think that is such a huge part in where
Yeah.
people end up. And I think you're kind of a really good example of kind of carrying that familial ties to now again, like I said, like to the second generation. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I just try to give her as much, like I said, wisdom and knowledge as I can, and let her do with it what she wants. Sometimes she listens, sometimes she doesn't. But that's a part of being a teenager, I feel like.
As like a previously minted teen, maybe just like a few years ago,
Right.
I can
Yeah.
100% relate to that part. I guess we can, transition to obviously now life as like an investor and obviously sports tech, but even just like athletes being investors. I'm sure
Mm.
you probably have some people in that network. Like what was kind of that maybe that aha moment or something where you wanted to, invest in maybe tech companies, or was it something I know we had talked about maybe like real estate? Like what was kind of the first thing that maybe got you in this space? And then how has that kind of progressed, right? Is that kind of your new like, athletic journey in the sense like you're just getting better every day with it? Like maybe walk us through that.
Yeah, so I never really knew much about investing before, besides like the S&P 500 stuff like that.
Mhm.
But and then a lot of the I guess deals like when I was coming up, they were only prevalent for like the big superstars. So I was like a middle of a pack guy, so I didn't really get any of those deals. But I did luck up and get one deal where I got some equity into a company, and
Mhm.
I saw that the company wasn't growing, and so I asked for the equity back in cash, and they actually gave it to me. So that's why I was surprised, and that's kind of where I just started diving deeper into VC and venture capital and equity, and just trying to learn more about it. And I definitely love it now. And I think athletes are so much more business savvy, I think, now than back in the day when I played. So it's definitely cool to see all these athletes doing so many different things, and besides just being an athlete, and getting introverted on the business side and learning the business side, and kind of conquering that side also.
Yeah, I don't even know if I told you this, but when we were out in the summer league, I was out at the Win where a lot of the players were. We were meeting a couple of them, and it's, one thing I know people just more from a casual setting, like casual fans, like they tend to like I think look down on like athletes from like an intellectual perspective. And I think
Yeah, yeah,
that's just I think it's a lot of BS because like
yeah,
when we
yeah,
were there, they carried themselves with really great professionalism. It really felt like I was sitting in like a room of like top execs. Like
yeah.
that was so mind-opening for me. And, obviously, because you're taught as a kid, like, oh, okay, like the athletes aren't the greatest in school. And I think that's
Right.
just something that, I think that's a norm that honestly should be abolished. But it's also, I think people are starting to recognize now that like athletes are being involved in, more than just playing the game. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
they're doing some really good things with their money. They're doing some really good things with, their stature and their ability to, get people on board. And I think that's something that, more people should take account on.
Yeah, and athletes can add so much value to your company, to your brand, and especially if they're coming in with knowledge and they have the wherewithal of experience. So I definitely think it's good for them to get in these conversations, have a seat at the table, and actually help these companies grow.
Yeah, 100%. Because it then becomes like that's like their next team. Maybe
Yeah,
after pro sports, it's like, hey, how can I help this? What is, the things to attack, right?
yeah.
Film study in a way of looking at other competitors, that type of thing. Like I think it is something that translates beyond just sports, like into anything that you take, note of. And I know, at least from a founder's perspective, we've been told to actually hire athletes because of
Yeah.
competitive mindset, right? They just put their heads down and work. Like it's something that
Yep.
is very prevalent in society, and it's a real skill that is not present to everybody. Like it's something
Yep.
that is hard to achieve. And if you've been doing it since you were like damn near 5 or 6 years old, like it's gonna probably stick with you
Yeah. Yeah.
the rest of
Yeah.
your life. So I think, maybe just yeah, focus on like as an investor, like what do you look for? What is something that's maybe catching your eye in the tech space today? Anything that, like I said, has like evolved from, just like maybe looking at one particular sector to now maybe going a little bit more holistic. Maybe walk us through that process.
So when I started investing, I started doing more late stage investments,
Hmm.
but now I've started doing more pre-seed or seed. So I definitely think, for me, looking at the investor landscape, I want to invest in companies that can grow and scale fast, but also something that I believe in, something that I know something about the topic. So obviously, not because we're talking to you, but PlayVision is always one of those companies.
There.
But I definitely like the sports and health and wellness. Markets are definitely kind of keen to me. Like I said, I know those markets and also experienced it. So a lot of those things that people are talking are probably building. I can give some kind of insight on them. So those are like things that I like to look for.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I already know we've already talked about obviously my company, but I know I probably got a couple companies just to mind that I would love to bring you to, even off
Mhm.
off camera, just with what, your perspectives are and how you can maybe help. So yeah, I mean, that was pretty much it. It was so great having you on, CJ. And obviously, just so great to kind of hear your story and really excited for you next steps as an investor and then for your daughter as well. Obviously, we're going to keep tabs on that. So
No,
yeah,
appreciate
thanks
it.
for coming on, brother.
No, thanks, man. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Cheers.